Okay, let's jump right into this explainer by starting at the absolute horrific end of our story. Imagine this. A man is utterly terrified, right? But he can't even scream because his skin is literally ripping apart, turning into hard bark. His chest is absorbing into this massive cursed banyan tree trunk, and his eyes are morphing into twisted branches. Yeah, it is a deeply unsettling image. But how on earth did he get there? Well, today we're going to reverse engineer exactly why this guy, Madhib, met such a grim fate, and look at how his own deeply repressed guilt meticulously doomed him.
Ask yourself this for a second. What happens when the ghosts that haunt you are actually just your own guilt? That's what we're dealing with here. We're looking at a narrative that hooks us immediately, because honestly, this isn't your standard run-of-the-mill spooky folklore about wandering into the wrong woods at night. No way. This is a deep psychological puzzle. The horror here isn't external at all. It's completely internal. It's the story of a man who has lied to himself for so long that his own mind and the very environment around him turn those lies into literal monsters.
To really get this, we have to understand the setting itself, Bedipur. Now, Bedipur isn't just a normal abandoned village. Think of it more as a mirror. It's this supernatural ecosystem that doesn't even recognize the living. Instead, it exists solely to reflect and punish the unresolved sins of whoever walks into it. So, we've got Madhav. He's biking down this dark, dead silent path through tall pigeon pea fields, thinking he's just visiting his sick mother. But the reality? He is walking blindfolded right into a highly customized, inescapable trap that was built specifically for his personal sins. The whole environment is just feeding off his darkest secrets.
Let's actually map out Madhav's descent into madness, because it unfolds in 4 really distinct stages. First up is the banyan tree, which acts as the warning. Second, he reaches the house, which gives us the illusion. Third is the well, which is the trap. And finally, the temple, delivering the ultimate revelation. Each of these steps systematically strips away another layer of Madhav's self-deception, dragging him closer and closer to a truth he spent years trying to outrun.
Right at that first stage, the banyan tree, Madhav runs into an old man named Kaka, who's just calmly smoking a good hookah in the eerie, foggy silence. Kaka lays down the golden rule of this folklore. He says, "The path ahead is not straight. Do not look back." It's that classic mythological warning, right? But in Bedipur, looking back isn't just about losing a loved one. It's about confronting the past you literally ran away from. And of course, the second Madhav hears a whisper in the dark, he turns his head. By doing that, he actively invites his past sins to catch up with him.
Because he breaks that golden rule, we immediately hit stage 2, the illusions of home. When Madhav finally gets to his house, the sensory horror just kicks into overdrive, and the reality he so desperately wants completely crumbles around him. Pay attention to these incredibly eerie details. There's a diya, a traditional lamp, burning, but it's filled with water instead of oil. His wife, Sutha, hands him a dinner thali, but instead of roti, it's just a pile of wet mud. And the kicker? Sutha has absolutely no shadow, and blood starts weeping from her eyes. The village is taking his desires and weaponizing them, violently mocking his hope for a warm homecoming.
The psychological terror really ramps up when the village confronts Madhav with what he's actually lost. He looks down and he realizes his own shadow is missing from his feet. Where did it go? Well, it's hanging from the branches of the banyan tree, swaying back and forth like a corpse, actively mocking him. You see, in this mythology, your shadow is deeply tied to your soul, your humanity. So by showing his shadow hanging there lifelessly, Bedipur is hitting Madhav with a grim truth. The man who rode in on that squeaky bicycle is already dead inside.
Let's break down this massive psychological disconnect, because it's absolutely crucial to understanding what's going on. Madhav is desperately holding on to this belief that he's a living, heroic son, valiantly returning from the city with medicine. But the grim reality that the village knows, he's a coward. He's a man who died inside a long time ago when he utterly abandoned his family. The entire tension of this story rests right there, in that massive gap between the lie Madhav tells himself just to survive and the horrific truth the village is forcing him to remember.
Okay, so the trap is finally sprung when he reaches the dry well. Bedipur is so expertly weaponizing Madhav's deepest family ties, using them as deadly bait. First, he runs into Shambhu, the old village watchman. Shambhu hands him a flashlight, but his hand is ice cold. Madhav shines the light and realizes he's looking at Shambhu's dried, dead corpse. Then, echoing from the bottom of a dry well, Madhav hears his mother's loving voice, calling out to him, asking for the medicine. It is perfectly engineered manipulation. He's literally about to jump in, until he strikes a match and sees the truth. There's no mother down there, just a massive pit of venomous snakes and bones.
Now, keep the number 5 in mind here. When Madhav finally makes a run for the village temple, hoping to find some kind of sanctuary, the terrifying truth is fully unlocked. Bedipur hasn't even existed for 5 years. 5 years ago, a devastating fire burned the entire village, including Madhav's family mansion, straight to ashes. Bedipur isn't some village of ghosts haunting a living man. It's an echo chamber of ash and ruin, existing solely to actively punish the one man who escaped.
And who exactly is dealing out that punishment? Well, he is. Let's look at the physical manifestation of a soul abandoned in terror, the headless shadow. As Madhav is fleeing the burning illusions of his home, he gets attacked by his own severed, headless shadow. I mean, this is pure psychological horror at its finest. That shadow represents the humanity, the courage, the actual soul that he cowardly left behind on the night of the fire. The shadow wants to take his place in the living world, while condemning Madhav to become the dust of Bedipur. He is quite literally fighting his own guilt.
All of this brings us to the ultimate climax of our explainer. The priest in the Takodwara temple delivers this absolutely crushing revelation. He says, "You saved your life, but you left your soul right here." That quote changes everything. It shifts our entire understanding of the narrative. This isn't just a supernatural horror story anymore. It is purely psychological. Madhav didn't just happen to survive a fire. He ignored his mother and his wife as they burned alive, saved only himself, fled to the city, and then convinced himself they had died of some illness. He manufactured this massive delusion, but Bedipur is the mirror that finally shatters it.
And because he can't possibly pay his debt to the dead, we arrive at the final stage, the metamorphosis. Madhav becomes the very trap he walked into. We can break down this visceral, agonizing transformation right here. Step 1, his skin rips open, turning into hard bark and roots. Step 2, his chest is completely absorbed into a massive trunk. And Step 3, his eyes morph into the twisted branches of the banyan tree. He is literally forced to become the village's new cursed guardian. He can still see, he can still feel, but he can only speak as the rustling leaves and creaking wood.
But of course, the cycle continues. Bringing the narrative full circle, the sun rises, the illusions vanish, and the dirt path is perfectly quiet again. But then, you hear it, that distinct kutch, kutch sound of a squeaky bicycle chain. A brand new traveler arrives. He sits down to rest under this massive, newly formed banyan tree, maybe noticing an old, rusted bike nearby. And suddenly, from deep within the wood, a dry voice asks for a match to light a beedi. This new traveler is about to face the exact same test, warned by the very man who failed it the night before.
Which brings us to a deeply unsettling question to wrap up this explainer. If you found yourself walking down that dark, haunting path to Bedipur, would you be able to resist looking back? We all have regrets, right? Moments of cowardice or guilt that we try to bury deep down. What this story shows us are the mechanics of that guilt, how it hunts us, how it manipulates us, and how, if we leave it unresolved, it can completely consume who we are. Definitely keep that in mind the next time you feel the urge to look over your shoulder.